Hi everyone, and welcome to week 4, Assessing Communities. So the purpose of today's class is to look at the process by which we evaluate communities' needs and their resources and are able to assess them. Just a little overview of what we're working on today. So again, the required reading is chapter 6 of the textbook. There's a supplemental reading. Working on the lecture now. There's a short video for you to watch. It's another TED Talk. The activities that are due this week will be, again, the lecture quiz, and then you'll need to complete a community asset map for your selected community. So when we're thinking about the planned change process, so when you are trying to engage a new client and trying to make a change in their life, the process is no different from making a change within a community. So I'm going to talk about that a lot, that it's really the same process. For a community level change, just like an individual level change, we start with the assessment. So when someone walks into your door for the first time, they're going to be completing paperwork. You're going to be talking to them about why they're there today. So it's the same for a community. So a lot of the resources that I'm pulling from for the lecture today is being pulled from the Community Toolbox. So this is a resource by the University of Kansas. And there's a link for it in the PowerPoint in like the comment section. And it really does have a lot of really good templates and resources, PowerPoints, videos, specifically on addressing community-based problems. So that's kind of where I got the crux of the PowerPoint for today. So when we think about community problems, there's a lot to pull from. So if we're thinking about arson, substance use, pregnancy, domestic violence, etc., we can see all of these are opportunities to engage community members in change. So everyone has a specific problem that they're choosing for their community assessment. These are a lot more examples. So let's think about the example of childhood obesity. And it's really important that when we're thinking about a problem, we're not just looking at what's kind of this problem on a broader scale, but we have to look at the details of this problem, and analyzing it requires a really thorough understanding of the problem and looking at the problem in different ways if we really want to tackle the long-term solution. So we really need to take the time to really fully assess what problem are we looking at. And the criteria we use just to define the problem. So if we are defining the problem of childhood obesity in this fake town of Pleasantville, there's really steps that we look at. The first is the frequency of the problem. So how frequently is it occurring? How often does it occur? Then we look at the duration. So how long has it lasted? How long will it last? Then we look at the scope of the problem. So this is looking at how many people are affected. The severity of the problem is the level of disruption to community or individual life. So lecture question number 1 is what is the level of disruption defined as, and it would be severity. The perception of the problem is, does the community perceive it to be a problem? Because if this isn't something that the community is really identifying and the community really thinks is a problem, then we're going to have a hard time really addressing it, because you're going to need to get community members on board. And if they don't think it's a problem, they're not going to be motivated to help solve the problem. So if we're specifically looking at the problem of childhood obesity, so when we're thinking about frequency, so how often it occurs, we can say that 1,000 kids in Pleasantville are overweight or obese. So 1,000 kids are meeting those medical diagnostic criteria for being overweight or obese. The duration is how long is it lasting. So we can say that individuals who are obese in childhood remain obese as adults. So this is a long-term problem. So this isn't just someone is overweight for a year. They're typically overweight for a long period of time. So it's a long duration. When we're thinking about the scope of the problem, 1,000 kids, how many is that in comparison to the general population in Pleasantville? So 1,000 kids translate to 40% of low-income kids who reside in Pleasantville. So we've kind of identified that the scope is really focused on low-income kids in particular, and 40% of them are overweight or obese. So again, the severity of the problem. So what level of disruption does this have to personal or community life? And for childhood obesity, kids who are overweight or obese have less engagement in sporting activities, less engagement in recreation, limited socialization, poor health. So this is a severe problem. It's really disabling to an individual. So it has long-term implications that are severe for an individual and need to be addressed. Because, of course, you can identify other problems, and if they're not really causing a disruption to personal or community life, then it might not be a problem that really needs to be addressed. So again, the perception, do people perceive this to be a problem? And yes, doctors, PE teachers have alerted the community of the problem, and they are perceiving this to be a problem and trying to get the rest of the community on board. So once we've kind of been able to define the problem, then we're going to be just fully analyzing this specific problem. We know what our problem is, but let's look at it in a little more detail. And the first step is to look at the root causes of the problem. So what are the basic reasons behind the problem? What's causing the problem to occur? And this is where we can kind of use our but why technique. So if we think about the root cause of something, but why does that happen? We can kind of keep asking the but why question to really come to the core reason that problem's occurring. So your second lecture question of the day is, when do we use the but why technique? It's specifically applied to understanding the root causes of the problem. And we'll walk through specific examples for each of these. The restraining forces of the problem is looking at what's preventing the problem from changing. What are the social structures, the cultural traditions, the ideology of the people who live in the community, lack of knowledge, the political structures, lack of access to things that are really preventing the problem from changing. And then what are the driving forces? What are the things that are pushing it towards change? So you have the restraining forces restraining it, pulling it to stay where it is, and the driving forces are things that are pushing it to change. So what might be maybe public opinion towards the problem? People don't like that kids are obese. Public education efforts, alternatives that are coming that might help push it towards change. And then we have to look at additional factors that may be contributing to the problem, either positively or negatively. We have personal factors, for example, individuals' knowledge, beliefs, their skills, what's individuals' educational background that might contribute to the problem, their background, the culture, etc. And then also looking at the environmental factors. So what's going on in the community, such as the availability of services, what information, support is available, accessibility to different things in the environment, and different economic conditions that might be really contributing to the problem. Again, either positively or negatively. The targets and the agents of change is where we need to be focusing our attention when we're thinking about an intervention or a solution to the problem. So the target of change is who specifically do you need to focus your efforts on, while the agent of change is who has the power to improve the situation. Where do we need to be directing our work? So the third lecture question of today's lecture is who has the power to improve the situation, and that would be the agent of change. So let's look at how this kind of looks for childhood obesity. So if we think about our root causes for the problem, what's causing childhood obesity? So the first thing that might pop into your head is, well, it's probably that kids aren't eating healthy and they're not exercising. So typically when we think about obesity, it's about diet and exercise. So that's kind of the first cause of the problem. Well, then we have to ask ourselves, but why? Why is this happening? Why aren't kids eating healthy and why aren't they exercising enough? So and we also kind of see that this problem is primarily focused on low-income households. So let's think about why kids aren't eating healthy. So maybe they're not eating healthy because their parents lack knowledge of a healthy diet. Uh, but why do they lack that knowledge? Parents in low income households tend to have lower levels of education. Um, they have less access to healthy food in general. So, why is it that kids aren't exercising enough? Let's think about that. What's causing kids to not exercise? Maybe kids don't go outside enough. Um, but why aren't kids going outside? Maybe they reside in a neighborhood that has a high crime. So they're not able to go outside because it's not safe to go outside. But why isn't it safe to go outside? There's a lot of gangs in the neighborhood. Uh, why are there a lot of gangs in the neighborhood? Maybe we can dial that back to economic conditions that, there's high crime because there's not a lot of jobs in the neighborhood. So when there's not a lot of jobs, people might get engaged in some illegal activity to make money, such as selling drugs. And when they're outside selling drugs, kids aren't going to be able to go outside and play. Additionally, if we go back to looking at that healthy diet, why aren't kids eating healthy? Another structural factor could be that parents don't buy healthy foods. But why? Why aren't parents buying healthy food? Because they don't have access to healthy foods. But why don't they have access? They don't have access because there's not supermarkets in the neighborhood. There's not supermarkets because it's a low income area and it's not profitable for the supermarkets to put a supermarket in the neighborhood, which means that parents are buying their food from Family Dollar or the local convenience store, neither of which has healthy foods. So you can kind of see that these kind of can be pulled back to these larger structural problems within the community that we really need to get to understand the full root of the cause. If we only look at the fact that kids aren't eating healthy, they're not exercising, we're not going to be able to make change on a community level. If we're just trying to give parents information on a healthy diet, it's not really addressing the fact that parents can't buy healthy food. So even if they have the knowledge of what a healthy diet consists of, they're not going to be able to access it because they probably lack transportation to get to the supermarket that is out of town because it's not where they're living. So that's kind of the steps we would go through to get to that root cause of the problem. Just constantly asking, but why is this happening? To fully understand the situation. So our restraining forces, again, so what's preventing the problem from changing? So it might be, again, as I mentioned, it might be the reluctance of grocery stores to open in this low income area because it's not profitable. It takes a lot of extra incentive for grocery stores to go into a low income neighborhood, which really causes food deserts. And you see food deserts a lot in urban areas and in rural areas that are poorer, and it's hard to pull in that economic investment. It may also be that there's high availability of junk food. So in addition to the fact that there's not a local grocery store, it's really easy to go to the convenience store and buy junk food, buy chips, buy Easy Mac, something easy for parents to make that has no health benefits for their kids. So this availability is really causing the problem to maintain. But let's think about driving forces. What are the drivers? What's causing strides to reduce childhood obesity? What's really helping people to reduce the problem? And it might be, we'll cancel that email. Driving forces might be that there's people in the community who are identifying this to be a problem. Physicians are concerned. They want kids to play outside. The kids want to play outside. And people can start working together to figure out a way that kids can play outdoors. Of course, we have to look at the factors that are contributing to the problem. So if we think about personal factors, we have to keep in mind that there is a genetic component. Some people are predisposed to being overweight or obese. That's always going to be present. We also have to think about that fact that some parents don't have, do or do not have knowledge of what healthy foods are. So that is a personal factor that's also going to be contributing to it. So it can be knowledge, positive or negative. Some parents have the knowledge, some parents don't. But there's a lot of environmental factors that need to be kept in mind as well. So again, looking at the availability of snack foods, where the supermarkets are. Poverty is a huge issue that contributes to childhood obesity. Parents working a lot. So if parents are in poverty, they might be working 3 jobs. They don't have time to prepare this super healthy meal for their kids. It takes time and it's expensive to buy healthy food. So even if healthy food is available for families, a banana, buying bananas, buying apples, vegetables are a lot more expensive than buying like chicken nuggets. And chicken nuggets might fill up their kids a little more. And it's easier to buy something, to run through McDonald's and pick up McDonald's than to make that healthy meal. So a lot of it comes down to time as well, and we really have to perceive that to be, it's a real problem when people are in poverty. They just don't have the time or the resources to provide healthy food. So when we're thinking about the targets of change, so where do our focus interventions need to be placed on? Who's able to make that change? So there's a few different targets. So if we're thinking about an intervention to solve this problem, it might be that our intervention is with the parents, that we're providing parents with knowledge of a healthy diet. Maybe our intervention is on children to provide them with an intervention, an exercise intervention, a physical education opportunity for the kids. Maybe we have an inside rec center for the kids to come and exercise in a safe environment. Maybe our target is the school lunch staff. Maybe in addition to parents not providing healthy meals for their kids, maybe at school kids aren't getting healthy food either, because again, it's healthier, it's easier, and it's cheaper to provide chicken nuggets than to provide kids with a salad. Salad's more expensive. So maybe we need to think about changing school lunch plans to ensure that kids are getting their vegetables at school, because they get about half their food at school. Between breakfast and lunch for some of these low-income kids, changing school lunch plans can really make a significant difference. Our agents of change is really who has the power to improve the situation. When it comes down to it, school lunch staff don't necessarily have a ton of control over their budget or what their meal options are. So maybe we need to focus on superintendents of the schools. They really have the power to tell their school lunch staff that this needs to change, and maybe here's a little more money in the budget to make the change in the school lunches. Our agents of change can also be the parents. The parents ultimately have control over what the kids are eating and control over what the kids are doing. So maybe we can utilize the parents to push the kids to exercise a little more. So again, all of these are the steps that we go through when we're analyzing a very specific problem. So now that we have a good idea of what the problem is, it's important that we're also identifying the best solutions to the problem. Because the fact of the matter is, we might have a great solution that can, help maybe kids in the entire school district. But if that solution's really expensive, is it going to be the best? Is it going to be really feasible to implement? So we have to think about cost. Think about a cost-benefit solution. How much is this costing versus how many people are we really impacting? So we have to think about the cost, the time, how much time do we have to really engage in this solution. So if we're thinking about an exercise intervention, an exercise treatment program for kids, if the kids are meeting, two times a week for 2 hours, that's 4 hours a week that we're contributing. Do we have staff to really provide that? Versus if we're thinking about doing increasing parents' knowledge, maybe we can have one workshop on healthy eating, and that alone will only take 2 hours. So that might not reach as many kids, but it's not going to be as time consuming. Again, the number of people that we're reaching, how many people is it going to take to implement the solution, what obstacles are going to be in our way, and obstacles, can be, do we have the space, getting the kids involved. Transportation might be an obstacle for trying to engage kids in an after-school exercise program. Are we going to have buses to get the kids back home? Because if we're thinking about low-income families, they might not be able to get their kids back home on their own. What will be the impact? So, if we're, again, trying to reduce childhood obesity, how many, what's going to be the difference in BMI? Are kids going to lose 10 pounds because of this exercise program, or are kids going to lose 1 pound? That has to be kept in mind. The side consequences, anticipated effects. So if we're thinking about unanticipated effects, maybe some kids might gain weight because of the exercise program. Maybe we'll be putting the families in a difficult situation to get the kids home. There might be some problems that occur because of the solution. What's the community prefer? Do they want to focus on getting kids exercising, or do they want to focus on solving healthy eating? Maybe the community really wants to focus on the kids. Maybe they think that parents should be able to choose what they feed their kids, so we don't want to tell the parents what to do. Maybe we can focus on the kid side of it. And of course, is it going to be successful? So we have to look at past things that have worked, and what does the literature really show on how this problem can best be solved. So of course, when we're thinking about developing solutions to problems, we have to start by identifying community assets and resources. So what's already in the community that we can use to address the problem? Because we're not going to have the time to pull in everything. We have to use things that are already existing within the community. So what are community assets? So community assets, this is your final question on the lecture quiz. They're anything that can be used to improve quality of life. And they can really be anything in the community, any positive aspect of the community that can be leveraged to develop a solution. So it might be physical structures, such as a church, the neighborhood library, parks, vacant land. So if we're thinking about it, let's use again our example of tackling childhood obesity. Maybe we have a rec program for kids at the local park. Maybe we pull kids together to the park and have an activity there for them. That's a physical structure. We don't have to build a park. The park is already there. Let's use that to our advantage. Let's think about businesses, for-profit businesses, social service agencies. Those are all examples of community resources that can be leveraged. So are there social service agencies in the area that are already focused on healthy eating? How can we collaborate with them to really expand what they're doing? How can we also engage with for-profit businesses? How can we pull in a local grocery store? I did a project one time in working with a local business. So it was a local, specifically focused on childhood obesity. So there was a local social service agency that partnered with a local grocery store. And the social service agency had a dietitian who provided tours of the grocery store to local low-income families, to parents, to provide parents with knowledge on buying healthy foods within the grocery store. Trying to understand what's the most cost effective, buying hamburger that's 93% meat versus 80%, which is more cost effective, and why. And that came about because of a collaboration between the local nonprofit and this for-profit business. And how can we leverage that? Think about community associations, there's service clubs, there's cultural organizations, religious groups. Religious groups and service clubs have a lot of stake in the community, and they really do a nice job of pulling people together. So how can we maybe hold workshops at churches or at these religious groups to provide knowledge on healthy eating? Or maybe we can have these local service clubs who hand out flyers to families at local businesses on healthy eating. We can, of course, leverage our institutions, schools, hospitals, police departments, fire departments. If we're going back to this childhood obesity, how can we pull in superintendents, school lunch staff, PE teachers to get kids moving and eating healthy? We, of course, have to look at economic conditions. We kind of looked at poor economic conditions as a potential root cause for why kids can't play outside because there's high crime. So think about the wealth and the jobs within the community that can be used as an asset. And of course, everyone living in the community is an asset. Think about the people, the professionals there. They have skills, they have talents that are an asset. If we have a local dietitian in the community who's really concerned about childhood obesity, even if that dietitian doesn't work in the community, pull them in and they might be able to donate their time to lead these workshops. So make sure you're definitely looking at the individuals who might hold a stake in the community and be willing to donate their time. So to identify these community assets, so you're going to be completing a community asset map for your project this week. And essentially what a community asset map is an inventory of all of the groups who have a stake in the community, the organizations, the associations, institutions, the entire list that I just talked about, all of those individuals, the locations, the organizations. Figure out what they are and how can they help solve the problem. To find the information, start with you. You should be choosing the community that you have some level of knowledge of. So think about the resources that you are aware of in the community. The United Way has great 2-in-1 directories. So it's essentially a database of a lot of nonprofit, for-profit businesses to solve specific problems. There's community websites. So, Old North Community Association has a website with a whole list of community resources and businesses within it. There's Chamber of Commerce that has a list of businesses. The Yellow Pages, probably a little outdated, but there are still Yellow Pages out there. And again, the City Chamber of Commerce. So look at all of these to really help you with your community asset map. And a community asset map can be a physical map where you map out, where are all of the social. So this little map shows all of the social aspects. Where's the city park? Where's the high school? Where are the academic assets, such as a library or a school? Where physically are things located so that you know how you can pull those resources together. For your project, due this coming week, you're going to be doing more of the map on the left-hand side. So you're not going to be physically mapping them out, but you're going to be identifying them in pulling them together all on one sheet. So we're going to be looking at the physical, the associations, the institutions, the local economy, the individuals that can all be leveraged to solve community problems. So when you're thinking about individual assets, when you're thinking about individuals, how can you identify individuals? In the future, if you're thinking about doing this, there's really great individual capacity inventories. If you Google individual capacity inventory, lots of stuff will pop up on Google. Essentially what it is, it's a survey that has a list of skills, abilities that individuals can kind of say, hey, yeah, I know how to do that. I know how to fix a door that's off its hinges. I don't know how to do that, but maybe someone else does. And it's good to know who our construction workers are, who are people that have accounting abilities, who are people that are dietitians. Really being able to identify all of these unique skills that individuals within the community have. And these skills can be things you've learned from your professional experiences at home, at church, things you've learned on the job, in a variety of ways that really can be leveraged for different problems and solutions. So again, once you kind of assessed a community, so we've assessed our community, we've looked at the asset maps, we've identified problems and solutions to problems. This is no different than what we do with an individual. So once we kind of complete that individual assessment, then we're creating a plan. We're creating a plan to solve that problem, address the problem, implement a solution, and then we're acting on the plan. You do the same thing with individuals. You have an individual plan that you arrange with the individual, and then you start implementing it. So in the following weeks, we'll be thinking about how to plan a community intervention and really how to implement that. So our activities for this week, again, would be your lecture quiz that is on Blackboard. You're also going to be completing a community asset map. So I am going to switch over to Blackboard at this point. So here's our Blackboard page. If you go to the week 4 folder, everything's outlined here. This is your little TED Talk, asset-based community development. If you go down to the community asset map, so this is where you're going to be submitting your community asset map, but right here we have an asset map template. So this, if you click on it, it'll be a Word doc, and this is where you're physically going to be inputting what it looks like for your community in particular. So you're going to be focused on your community. So all of you already have a community of choice. So if you chose Old North St. Louis, talk about the physical spaces, the institutions, the economy. I might put Crown Candy Kitchen on the local economy because that's a really important business in Old North. So think about how it applies to your community in particular. I also have an example that I put together last year. Or I did not put this together. This was put together for me. This will give you an idea of some of the things that you might be thinking about for your community. So just to give you an idea of some of the things we're looking for. So it's a sample community asset map, templates there. You're going to be submitting your personal asset map through that link. And here are some resources down here. Just some ideas of where you can get information. So I have the 211 for St. Louis and Toledo. That's where pretty much everyone, I believe everyone's projects are either located in St. Louis or Toledo, so that can give you a nice link to what the community resources might be for that specific community. Yeah, so that is your asset map. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to walk you through that. So that's what you have due on February 15th at 11:59 p.m. So what else do we have coming up? Those are our activities for this week, but what else is coming up with regards to our main community assessment paper? So on the 22nd, so that would be in 2 weeks, we have our community windshield survey due. So again, it's due on February 22nd. In this activity, students will take about an hour to explore their selected community. So that might be probably a combination of both driving and walking around the community. If your community is not the safest, do this during the day. Well, in general, I would suggest doing this during the day because you're going to need to take pictures. But definitely if you are in a potentially unsafe area, do not do this at night. Maybe have someone come with you. Maybe don't walk around. So I will let you use your discretion at that, but I don't want anyone saying that my teacher made me walk around at midnight through this unsafe area. So make sure you are safe. Safety is, of course, important. Do not walk on the side of the street. Make sure you're walking on sidewalks. So what you're going to be doing for this assignment is you're going to take 8 pictures during your walking or driving tour. And again, I am going to say that do not take pictures while you are driving. If you want to take it while you are stopped at a stoplight, go for it. But I would highly suggest that you pull into a parking lot and take some pictures of the parking lot or while you're walking around. Don't take pictures while driving. But you're going to be taking 8 pictures, 8 that really will help give me an idea of what this community looks like. And it's going to be through your eyes. So you're going to be taking pictures of different things in the community, whether that be a park, an abandoned building, a local grocery store, different things in the community that help give me and others an idea of what this community looks like and what are the assets and problems within the community. So you're going to take these 8 pictures, you're going to submit them through a shared Google folder, and I want a caption for each picture about what it represents in the community. You also need to complete a Windshield Survey worksheet to summarize your observations. So let's walk through what both of those mean. So let's go back to Blackboard. We're going to go to assignment descriptions, and there's a whole nice little folder here on windshield/walking survey. So open that up. Here's your description of the assignment. Here's a description of how you need to submit your pictures. Okay, so you're going to click on this link, and if you are already logged into your Gmail, if you have like a Gmail account, you might already be logged into it. But this is a shared folder, so everyone's pictures are going to go in here so that everyone can see each other's communities, because I think it's important for everyone to understand what other people are doing. So I've gone ahead and added some pictures of my own. So let's say I'm doing Old North St. Louis. It's a neighborhood in Old North St. Louis. A little background on the neighborhood that these pictures can help show is that the neighborhood historically, over the past few decades, has been high poverty, not some high crime too, but recently the neighborhood's really starting to revitalize. So there's some really important businesses and economic development in the neighborhood, but it still has some problems. So some of the pictures I have, and you can, the way that you add them, so I added these. The first thing you might need to do is you might need to like click this join here, and that might help you be able to add pictures. So you'll either need to log in using your Gmail account or your SLU account. If you log in with your SLU account, you'll be able to input pictures. And the way that you do that is if you click this little add to album right there, I can select from my computer. Let's see, I'm gonna go to my desktop. Here's my Old North picture. So I'm gonna add that. So now I have this, it'll pop up. Okay, here you go. So now I have this picture, and what this picture is showing is the recent economic development that's come into the area. So these are new buildings, there's nice sidewalks, there's areas to put your bikes, to encourage exercise and socialization and recreation. There's a nice little park bench here. There's a street lamp. Street lamps are huge for safety. It's really important that there's well-functioning street lights and a well-functioning sidewalk for people to walk around. So that's one thing to keep in mind is when you're thinking about your community, are there sidewalks? That's a huge thing when it comes to safety and street lamps. So each person is going to comment on their own picture. So I'm going to click say something, and I'm going to write, you can see that it has my picture, so I know who's writing it. Old North St. Louis. And what's this demonstrating? New economic development with street lamps and sidewalks to encourage safety. And you click send, and it has a comment. So I can see what exactly is this picture trying to demonstrate. If I go back, I can look at all of the pictures, and I have comments for each picture. Like here I have a community garden. You can click the community garden. You can read my comment, Old North St. Louis. So make sure you're putting where in the comment. Make sure you put where this is so that people are aware. The neighborhood has access to a community garden to promote healthy eating and community engagement. So these are some of the pictures, and you can click through them for some examples. But these were all in North St. Louis. That's where all the pictures were taken. I stole them online. I'm not going to lie and say that I went and drove around Old North St. Louis. But I pulled them online so you can kind of see examples. But that's what we are doing for our windshield tour. So make sure you are adding your pictures via this folder. Now, what I will say is I know some people are struggling with technology. If you need to email me your pictures, that is perfectly fine. I'm super flexible. I can add the pictures to the Google Doc for you. Just find a way to get me the pictures, whether that be emailing them to me. Make sure you provide me with captions. You can email me 8 pictures and 8 captions. That works just fine. I'm super flexible. The other thing that you need to complete for this assignment is the Windshield/Walking Survey worksheet. So if you click it, it's going to open up a Word document, and you're going to need to, kind of similar to the asset map, you're going to be filling in things that you observed in the community from your walking tour or driving tour. So you do not have to answer every single question on this. Answer them the best to your abilities. Demographics, did you see people on the streets? Who were the people? Were they families? Were they elderly, etc.? What's the ethnicity? Bilingual signage, or not bilingual signage. Different areas have different levels of ethnic populations. Values and beliefs, or are there churches, synagogues, mosques, etc.? Physical space, did you see parks? Did they look friendly and inviting, or were they kind of worn down? Abandoned vehicles, what do the vehicles look like? Are they really nice vehicles, or do they have a lot of broken windshields? Are there health and social services available? Did you see any social service agencies, hospitals, clinics in the shelter, in the community? The economy, does it look thriving, feel run down? Are there abandoned buildings? Transportation, did you see people moving around? Buses, taxis, were there sidewalks? Maybe trails for riding your bike? Education, schools, libraries, community access, computer access, recreation, areas for kids to play. What did the housing look like? Age, vacancies, were there broken windows? Did it look really nice? Yeah, so you get where I'm going. You again don't have to answer every question. You don't even necessarily have to answer every box, but fill it in to the best of your abilities based on kind of what you were observing, so you can kind of see how you driving around and observing things really does tell you a lot about the neighborhood. You really can get a good feel for the neighborhood. Anyone who's ever bought a house or rented an apartment, hopefully before you did either of those, you drove around the neighborhood. I did before I bought my house. I drove around the neighborhood to get a feel for it. And if I didn't feel so good about the neighborhood, I crossed that house off my list. I wasn't going to go there. If it didn't look safe and feel warm and welcoming, then I was not going to end up living there. I was going to move on. So this is the worksheet that you need to complete. And again, all of this is located in the Windshield Walking Survey folder that's located in the assignment descriptions. Again, your pictures are going to be submitted via this link right here. It's a shared Google photo album, or email them to me. When you submit your worksheet, I will have a link in the week 5 folder. If you want to submit it earlier, you can email it to me, or else plan on submitting all of this through the week 5 folder, because it's due on February 22nd. Okay, and that is all that I have for today. Any questions or concerns, of course, please email me and I'm happy to help. Or else I will plan on touching base with everyone throughout the week, and I look forward to reading everyone's assignments and looking at everyone's asset map. Thanks. Bye.